Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Jay here, and I'd like to welcome you to another Nordcraft 101 tutorial. Today, why are you drooping? Today, we'll be talking about workflows. Now, for reference, if you want to play around with anything that you see me messing with here, this is available on my Nordcraft website, nordcraft.jcmpb.com. That's where you can access this project and have access to everything that I'm showing you, as well as how it's built by clicking on one of these links here, which will actually give you access to the project to where you can see how things were actually built. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into workflows. So workflows in Nordcraft kind of work similarly to how code works, to where we kind of want things to go from top to bottom in this sort of sequence. So that's what allows us to kind of like, if I were to actually write code and let's say I had this block of code, and what it was doing is that it was every second or so fetching a user from this database, and it was displaying them on a table or something like that, right? That same block of code is kind of how you would structure a workflow. So here in this basic workflow that does just that, what it'll do is we'll say that this is a pretend database. And what it's going to do is that every second or so is going to pull someone else from that list until it's finished. And then once it's finished, it'll basically say that it's done. It'll return to normal. So let me just showcase that. So we'll see that while it's running, it'll tell you who it's doing, and then that is in progress. And then once it's done, it'll go back to this beginning processing state. So let's see how I built that workflow. So here in the component, the basic workflow, we can see that I have a few variables. One, I have just the raw users. That is what you see here. And then I have formatted users, which is going to be the array that you see here that is taking the first name and the last name and it's combining them into one. And then we have index. And if you don't know what index is, that is basically for looping. So I'm saying at default, it'll be the zero index, zero being the first item in an array. So that is the current index that is on. And then at each cycle it is increasing the index by one. And then we just have a show processing message, which shows that little message you saw that it was processing this person, then processing that person, then processing that person. So I'm going to set this back to false, and we can actually take a look at the workflow. And again, if you want to actually view this for yourself, you can go ahead and open the project in the description or the pinned comment, and you can see this for yourself. So this workflow that I have called format users, what is happening that when it is called, it is going to check that index doesn't equal the raw user size. So if I open this formula here, you'll say we're just checking that index is less than or equal to raw users size minus one. So the actual zero indexed value of raw users, because you see the first one here is actually zero, not one. So if I didn't have size here, this would say five, as you can see there, but I don't actually have five items. So that would break it. So minus one to make it four. So while that is true, what we're going to do is we're going to show that processing image, and then we're going to grab that user. So we're doing raw user, and then we're going to saying get the index, and that's going to give us one of them, the first one being John Cena. So that's going to give us John Cena, and then we're just going to concatenate the first and last name, and then we're going to append that to our formatted users list. Then after that, we're just going to sleep. Now, this is just to kind of simulate you doing something with your database. We're just going to sleep, and then At the end of that sleep, we're going to increase index by 1, and then we're going to call this formula again. Now, when the index size is equal to the raw user size, it's going to remove the show processing message because now we're assuming it's done. So if it's done, we no longer want to show that message. And then otherwise, it's going to make sure to set the show processing message to false. So that's the entire workflow. So that's a little basic one. So again, I'll refresh and I'll do begin processing, and that you will see that it will keep processing. And I can't do it again because now index is now set to 0. So that's why begin processing isn't working, because now it is following this route over here. So at the end of it, if let me see, if I set index again to 0, it should run again. So let it run once, and then I should be able to run this again because now index should be 0 again. And you can see we are now able to run it again, but it's not going to redo the list because the list is still there. So if we wanted that, we can just clear the list, format it users like so at the end. So now once it finishes, it's going to remove all of them from the list. Like so, we can run it again. Okay, now we have a bit more of an advanced workflow. Now, I don't really know why I called this advanced, to be honest with you, because it just deals with a lot of sleeps, so it can kind of get a bit confusing. But this can kind of simulate a form request or something like that, where you're sending data and you have to wait for it to come back. And then when it comes back, you might want to show specific things and then maybe clear the form like that. So what this is doing is that when this workflow is called, it's going to set form state to loading. So this is just how I manage if my form is loading. So this will set form state to true instead of false, which will then disable the fields, and then we'll transform this button to be in that loading state. Then while it's doing that, it's going to sleep for 1.5 seconds. And then after that, we're going to set loading to false. So we're kind of like saying, okay, the API call is now done. Then we want to show success, just again, simulating like something was true or not. If a success happened, so we're saying true, then we're going to sleep again for 1.5 seconds, in which we're going to then show a clearing message, and then we're going to wait 3 seconds to actually clear the form and then set everything back to their default. So let's just quit yapping and actually give it a try here. So we're going to see here that it's going to start loading. So to stop loading, then this is going to appear. And then after 1.5 seconds, this is going to appear. And then after 3 seconds, it's going to delete everything and clear the form again. So let's just watch that one more time. And again, if you wanted to at every second, you could decrease that number. So it's like, okay, in 3 and 2 and 1, but I didn't get that far. But that's how workflows work in Nordcraft. Just think of it as visually coding the sequence of a function or a block of code, basically. So that's what workflows do. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you've got any value from this video, go ahead and do me a solid and leave a like, leave a comment on what you'd like to see more of, and subscribe to this channel as we're trying to hit 100 subscribers, and I do appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all. I will leave you now, and happy building.